Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and this is Part 4, Chapter 3. Let's begin. The truth of the matter was that right up to the last moment he had never even dreamt that such a denouement might be possible. He had bullied his way to the very limit, and it had never once entered his head that two impoverished and defenseless women might be able to escape from his power. His certainty on this account had been much assisted by vanity and a degree of self-confidence that might better be termed self-conceit. Pyotr Petrovitch, who had fought his way up from nowhere, was in the morbid habit of admiring himself, had a high opinion of his own intellect and ability, and would even, on occasion, when alone, admire his face in the mirror. What he cherished and valued more highly than anything else in the world, however, was his money, which he had acquired by hard work and by all kinds of means. It put him on equal footing with all that was above him. In recalling to Dunya with bitterness just then that he had ventured to take her in spite of the negative rumors there had been about her, Pyotr Petrovitch had been speaking perfectly seriously, and had experienced a deep sense of indignation at such flagrant ingratitude. As a matter of fact, however, at the time of making his proposal to Dunya, he had been fully convinced of the absurdity of all these rumors, which had been publicly refuted by Marfa Petrovna, and had long been forgotten by all the inhabitants of the unpleasant little town, who had come out warmly on Dunya's side. He himself would not have denied that he had known all that even at the time. Nevertheless, he had set a high price on his determination to raise Dunya to his own exalted level, viewing it as a noble deed. In mentioning it to her just then, he had been expressing a most secret, cherished thought of his, one that he had several times admired in private to himself. He was unable to comprehend how others could fail to admire it too. On presenting his visiting credentials to Raskolnikov the day before, he had made his entrance with the sense of being a benefactor, preparing to harvest the fruits of his endeavor, and to receive the very sweetest of compliments. And so it was natural that now, as he descended the staircase, he considered himself to have been spurned and insulted in the very highest degree. The plain fact was that Dunya was essential to him. He found it unthinkable that he should forego her. For a long time, several years now, he had been entertaining voluptuous dreams of marriage, but he had kept piling up his money and waiting. He thought with rapture in the deepest secret of a chaste and poor young girl. She must be poor. Very young, very pretty, well-mannered and well-brought up, very intimidated, who had experienced a great many misfortunes, and who would now be wholly at his bidding. The kind of girl who all her life would consider him her salvation, go in awe of him, subordinate herself to him, wonder at him and him alone. How many scenes, how many delightful episodes had he created in his imagination on this alluring and whimsical theme as he rested quietly from his business affairs. And then suddenly, the dream of all those years had almost come true. Avdotya Romanovna's beauty and education had impressed him. Her helpless situation had excited him beyond all measure. Here, there was even more than he had dreamed of. The girl who had appeared proud, full of character, virtuous, superior to him in education and upbringing, he sensed this. And yet this creature would view him with servile gratitude all her life for his noble deed, reverentially effacing herself before him, and he would have unlimited and exclusive power over her. Almost as if in accordance with some plan, not long before, after lengthy deliberations and calculations, he had finally decided to change his career and enter upon a wider arena of activity, while at the same time, little by little, making his way into a higher echelon of society. Something he had been thinking voluptuous thoughts about for a long time. He had, in short, decided to have a stab at St Petersburg. He knew that with women it was most possible to gain a great deal. The charm of a lovely, virtuous, and educated woman could gild his path in the most remarkable fashion, draw people to him, create an aura around him. And now all that had collapsed about his ears. The sudden, outrageous severing of bonds that had just taken place had an effect on him like a clap of thunder. This was some monstrous joke. An absurdity. He had done the merest amount of bullying. He had not even managed to say all he had intended to say. All he had done was make a few jests, follow the spirit of the moment. And it had all ended so seriously. Then there was the fact that he did, after all, love Dunya in his own way. He already had power over her in his dreams. And now, suddenly... No. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, all this would have to be repaired, remedied, put right, and above all, that overgrown urchin, that arrogant milkshop whose fault it was, would have to be annihilated once and for all. With a sensation of pain, he remembered, somehow in spite of himself, Razumikhin. But he soon put his mind to rest on that account. He can go down the drain together with him. But the person he was really afraid of was Svidrigailov. In short, much trouble lay ahead. No, I'm the one who's most to blame, Dunya said, embracing her mother and kissing her. I was tempted by his money. But I swear to you, brother, I had no idea he was such an unworthy man. If I'd seen him for what he was earlier, I should not have been tempted for anything in the world. Please don't hold it against me, brother. God has spared us. God has spared us. Pulcheria Alexandrovna muttered, but almost unconsciously, as though she had not quite realized the full extent of what had happened. They all felt a sense of relief, and after 5 minutes had passed, were even laughing. Only occasionally did Dunya turn pale and frown as she remembered what had taken place. Pulcheria Alexandrovna, too, had never imagined that she would feel like this. Only that morning the prospect of a break with Luzhin had seemed to her like a terrible misfortune. But Razumikhin was in ecstasy. Although he was not yet fully able to express it, he was trembling all over as if he were in a fever, and as if a ton of weight had been lifted from his heart. Now he possessed the right to devote the whole of his life to them, to serve them. All kinds of things were possible now. As yet, however, he shyly drove away any further thoughts as to what these might be, and felt afraid of his own imagination. Only Raskolnikov was still sitting where he had been earlier, looking sullen and even absent-minded. He, who had raised the greatest demand that Luzhin be sent away, now seemed less interested than any of them in what had happened. Dunya could not help feeling that he was still very angry with her, and Pulcheria Alexandrovna kept peering fearfully at him. What did Svidrigailov say to you? Dunya said, going over to him. Oh yes, tell us, tell us! Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Raskolnikov lifted his head. He is absolutely set on giving you 10,000 rubles, and he also wants to have a meeting with you in my presence. A meeting? Not for anything in the world! Exclaimed Pulcheria Alexandrovna. And how dare he offer her money? Then Raskolnikov recounted, in somewhat dry terms, his conversation with Svidrigailov, leaving out the part about Marfa Petrovna's ghosts, so as not to clutter his narrative with excessive detail, and because he did not feel like saying anything more than was strictly essential. What did you reply? Dunya asked. At first I said I wouldn't convey any message to you. Then he announced he would do everything within his power to obtain an interview with you. He said his passion for you had been a freakish fancy, and that now he feels nothing for you. He doesn't want you to marry Luzhin. In general, the things he said were rather confused. How do you account for his behavior, Roger? What sort of an impression did he make on you? To tell you the truth, I'm not really sure. He offers you 10,000, yet he himself says he is not rich. He announces his intention of going off on a journey somewhere, and 10 minutes later he's forgotten he's even told me about it. Then he suddenly tells me that he wants to get married, and that a bride is already being found for him. But then again, it's a bit strange to suppose he'd go about things so stupidly if he had any evil designs on you. I naturally refused the money on your behalf, once and for all. In general, the impression he made on me was a very strange one. In fact, I'd even say he showed signs of insanity. But I may be wrong. It may simply be a case of some kind of showing off. I think Marfa Petrovna's death is having a certain effect on him. May the Lord grant her soul rest, cried Pulcheria Alexandrovna. I shall pray for her ceaselessly. Oh, Dunya, what would we have done without that 3,000 rubles? Lord, it's as though it had fallen from heaven. Oh, Roger, all we had left this morning was 3,000 rubles. And the only thought Dunya and I had in our heads was how we could pawn her watch somewhere as quickly as possible so we wouldn't have to ask that man to lend us money before he realized what our situation was. For some reason, Svidrigailov's proposition had startled Dunya greatly. She stood there pondering. He's going to do something horrible, she said, almost in a whisper to herself, and shuddering slightly. Raskolnikov noticed this excessive fear. I don't think this is the last I've seen of him, he said to her. We'll watch him. I'll spy on him, Razumikhin exclaimed energetically. I won't let him out of my sight. Roger's given me permission. That's what he told me earlier. Look after my sister, he said. Do I have your permission too, Evdotia Romanovna? Dunya smiled, and she extended her hand to him. But the worried look stayed on her features. Pulcheria Alexandrovna kept giving her timid glances. But the 3,000 rubles had obviously put her mind at rest. A quarter of an hour later, they were all deep in lively conversation. Even Raskolnikov, though he was not taking part, had been listening attentively for some time. Razumikhin was delivering a harangue. Why should you leave? He was saying in a rapture of expansive enthusiasm. What will you do in your nasty little town? The point is that you're all together here, and you're going to need one another. Oh, you're going to need one another, believe me. Well, for a while, anyway. Take me along as a friend, a companion, and I'll promise you we'll make an excellent business team. Listen, I'll set it all before you in detail. The entire project. It started to occur to me this morning, before any of this had happened. This is what I have in mind. I have an uncle. I'll introduce you. He's a well-built and most respectable old chap. And this uncle has a capital of 1,000 rubles. But he lives on a pension and has no use for the money. For 2 years now, he's been on at me to borrow the 1,000 from him and pay him in an interest of 6%. I can see what he's trying to do, of course. He simply wants to help me. Well, last year I didn't need the money. But this year I decided to take up his offer as soon as he arrived in town. Now, if you put in another 1,000 out of your 3, that will be enough to start with. And we'll combine forces. And what do you think we're going to do? At this point, Razumikhin began to outline his project, talking in great detail about how practically none of Russia's booksellers and publishers knew the first thing about the merchandise in which they traded, and were for that reason bad at their trade, and how decent editions of books generally paid for themselves and made a profit, sometimes a sizable one. It was of starting up a business as a publisher that Razumikhin had been dreaming. For the past 2 years, he had been working for publishers, and he possessed quite a reasonable knowledge of 3 European languages, in spite of the fact that some 6 days earlier he'd told Raskolnikov he was Svash in German, with the aim of trying to persuade him to take half of the translation against 3 rubles advance. He had been lying then, and Raskolnikov knew it. Why should we miss our opportunity when we have one of the principal means for its realization? Our own money, Razumikhin said, getting excited. Of course, a lot of work will be necessary, but we shall work. You, Evdotia Romanovna, Rodion, and I. There are certain types of editions that yield a handsome profit nowadays. And the rock-solid basis of our enterprise will be that we know just what requires translating. We shall translate and publish and study all at the same time. I can make myself useful now because I've got some experience. After all, I'll soon have been hanging around publishers for about 2 years now. And I know all their most cherished secrets. They're no saints, believe me. Why let a tasty morsel like that get away? I myself can think of 2 or 3 books of which I have copies, and which I've never told anyone about, which would be worth 100 rubles each just for the idea of translating and publishing them. And indeed, there's one I wouldn't take less than 500 for. Yet, what do you suppose? Even if I told one of those publishers about them, he'd probably still be humming and hawing, the dunderhead. And as far as the business about typesetting, paper, sales is concerned, you can leave that to me. I know all the ins and outs. We'll start from humble beginnings and attain great things. Or, at any rate, we'll have enough to live on. And whatever happens, we'll cover our losses. Dunya's eyes were shining. What you say appeals to me very much, Dmitri Prokofitch, she said. Well, of course, I don't know anything about such things, Pulcheria Alexandrovna responded. It may be a good idea, but then again, God only knows. It sounds new and unfamiliar. It's true that we shall have to remain here, at least for a certain time. She looked at Roger. What do you think, brother? Dunya said. I think he has a very good idea, he answered. Of course, one shouldn't think about founding a firm this far ahead, but it really would be possible to publish 5 or 6 books with unquestionable success. I myself can think of one book that would be certain to do well. And as for the question of whether he'd know how to manage the business, of that I have no doubts either. He knows his way around. Anyway, there'll be time for you to arrange things later. Hurrah! Razumikhin shouted. Now just a moment. There's an apartment here, in this very same building, rented out by the same landlord. It's separate and on its own, and it doesn't connect with these rooms. It's furnished, too, and it's available at a moderate rent. 3 rooms. I think you ought to take it to begin with. I'll pawn your watch tomorrow and bring you the money. And then everything else will sort itself out later. The main thing is that all 3 of you can live together. And Roger needn't be apart. I say, where are you going, Roger? What is it, Roger? Are you leaving so soon? Pulcheria Alexandrovna asked with a note of alarm. At a moment like this? Razumikhin bawled. Dunya looked at her brother with suspicious astonishment. He had his cap in his hands. He was preparing to go outside. Somehow, it's as if you were burying me, or saying farewell to me forever, he said in a strange kind of way. He gave what looked like a smile, though it might not have been anything of the sort. I mean, who knows? Perhaps this is the last time we will ever see one another, he added involuntarily. He had thought this to himself, but it had somehow been spoken aloud. What got into you? His mother exclaimed. Where are you going, Roger? Dunya asked in a strange voice. Oh, I've really got to go, he replied vaguely, as though hesitant as to what he was trying to say. But in his pale features there was a kind of sharp determination. I wanted to tell you. As I was on my way here, I wanted to tell you, Mother, and you, Dunya, that I think it would be better if we parted company for a while. I'm not feeling very well. I'm not at ease. I'll come and see you later. I'll come of my own accord when I can. I keep you in my thoughts and I love you. Now leave me. Leave me alone. I took this decision some time ago, before you arrived. It's a firm decision. Whatever happens to me, whether I perish or not, I want to be alone. Please forget about me altogether. It will be better that way. Don't try to find out about me. When the time is right, I'll come and see you myself, or I'll summon you. Perhaps everything will be all right. But now, if you love me, say goodbye to me. Otherwise, I shall start to hate you. I can feel it. Goodbye. Merciful Lord! Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Both mother and sister were in a terrible state of fright. So was Razumikhin. Roger! Roger! Make it up with us! Let us go back to how we were before! Cried the poor mother. Slowly he turned towards the door, and slowly he left the room. Dunya ran and caught up with him.
Brother, what are you doing to our mother?
Her gaze whispered as it burned with indignation. He looked at her heavily.
It's all right. I'll be back. I'll come back and see you.
He muttered in an undertone, as though he were not completely conscious of what he was trying to say, and went out of the room.
He's insane, not callous. He's mad. Can't you see it? If you can't, then you're the one who's callous.
Razumikhin whispered hotly, right into her ear, and gripping her arm tightly.
I'll be back in a moment,
he shouted, turning to the rigid Pulcheria Alexandrovna, and ran out of the room. Raskolnikov was waiting for him at the end of the corridor.
I knew you'd come out after me, he said. Go back to them, and stay with them. Come and see them tomorrow, too. And forever after. I may come back. If I can. Goodbye.
And without offering his hand, he walked off.
But where are you off to? What is this? What's gotten into you? You can't do this,
Razumikhin muttered, completely taken aback. Raskolnikov stopped a second time.
Look, once and for all. Don't ask me about any of this, ever. There is nothing I can tell you. Don't come to see me. I may come back here. Now abandon me. But don't abandon them. Do you understand?
In the corridor, it was dark. They were standing beside a lamp. For a moment, they looked at each other without saying anything. Razumikhin was to remember that moment for the rest of his life. Raskolnikov's fixed and burning gaze seemed to gather in strength at each instant, penetrating Razumikhin's soul, his awareness. Razumikhin gave a shudder. Something strange seemed to have taken place between them. Some kind of idea had slipped out, a kind of hint. Something horrible, monstrous, and suddenly comprehensible to them both. Razumikhin turned as white as a corpse.
Now do you understand?
Raskolnikov said suddenly, his features painfully twisted.
Go on, get back in there with them,
he added, and turning quickly, walked out of the building. I shall not attempt now to describe what took place that evening in the lodgings of Pulcheria Alexandrovna. How Razumikhin went back to the two women. How he calmed them down. How he tried to impress upon them that Roger's illness demanded that he have rest. Tried to reassure them that Roger would quite certainly come and see them every day. That he was very, very upset. That he must not be overexcited. How he, Razumikhin, was going to watch over him. Get him a good doctor. The best. A whole council of doctors. In short, from that evening on, Razumikhin became to them a son and a brother. Thank you so very much for listening. If you liked, please comment, share, like. If you really enjoyed, do subscribe, because there is more to come. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review, as it helps get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really, really makes my day. I don't know why the end of that chapter has touched me so much. If you want to support the show further, you can click on the Ko-Fi link, which is now on screen, or you can listen to the show on Spotify in your sleep. There's a link to the Spotify in your description box, and help me get the monetization requirements that I need there. Once again, thank you very, very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.